At 4:55 a.m. over the Black Sea, the electronic intelligence ship Ivan Khurs, a Project 18,280 class vessel of the Russian Navy, was patrolling its usual route over the Black Sea, roughly 86 miles north of the Bosporus Strait. But Kyiv had no intention of negotiating. According to reports cited by Pravda and Militarnyi, the available information, photographs, and video footage all confirm that the Ivan Khurs sustained severe damage from a series of coordinated Ukrainian strikes. Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate, the GUR, had already mapped the patrol pattern of the 4,000-ton reconnaissance ship. Behind the cover of a routine patrol, the vessel served a far greater purpose: the silent shield protecting Moscow's last lifeline, two strategic gas pipelines running under the Black Sea, Turkish Stream and Blue Stream. For a Russian economy suffocating under sanctions, those lines were the final veins still pumping life into the system. Together, Turkish Stream and Blue Stream move up to 48 billion cubic meters of gas a year, generating nearly $20 billion annually. Money that keeps Russia's exhausted banks breathing. The Kremlin knows one immutable truth: whoever controls the pipelines controls Russia's last foothold in Europe. That is why, at 5:10 a.m. on October 25th, 3 Ukrainian kamikaze USVs were already closing in on the central Black Sea, just 12 miles from Ivan Khurs. They were Magura 55s, lethal unmanned surface vessels built specifically for asymmetric warfare. Each craft measured about 6 meters long, cruised at 50 miles per hour, and could travel more than 620 miles without refueling. Their ability to coordinate in formation made them the nightmare of the Russian fleet. Their hulls, made from epoxy composites, fiberglass, and carbon fiber, were coated in radar diffusive paint, rendering them nearly invisible against the sea's radar clutter. On Russian surveillance screens, they were nothing but faint static, indistinguishable from the waves themselves. They had departed Odessa Bay at midnight, launched from a covert GUR platform. While crossing through the radar envelope of Crimea's S-400 systems, everything unfolded exactly as planned. No response, no detection, no alert. At the 91N6E radar station of the S-400 battery near Sevastopol, the operators carried on as usual. They had no idea their screens had already been deceived. A few even poured the first shots of vodka for the morning shift. On the radar displays, everything looked perfectly normal. But out at sea, the 3 USVs skimmed the waves, holding a steady 50 miles per hour. No radio signal, no emissions, no warning. At 6.2 miles out, Ivan Khurs had slipped into a radar blind spot, completely outside the protection rings of Russia's defense grid. The pride of Russia's naval intelligence fleet now had only its navigation radar and a few light machine guns to face 3 suicide drones carrying over 1,980 pounds of explosives. No alarms sounded, no orders were given. It was just another quiet morning, until everything changed. At 5:18 a.m., Ivan Khurs maintained its routine course through low visibility and dim dawn light. Navigation radar showed no anomalies. No one on deck noticed the 3 incoming shadows slicing through the sea. Beneath the surface, the 3 Magura V5s advanced in a triangular assault formation. 1 led the strike, while 2 flanked to the left and right like the blades of a spinning rotor, spaced 980 feet apart. Their speed was 4 times faster than the Russian ships. Their hulls skimmed less than 3 feet above the water, leaving no radar echo, no radio trail, no foaming wake. The range fell to 5 miles, but the Russian crew still hadn't reacted. Surface radar detected nothing. The drone's returns were buried inside the ocean's natural interference. The antenna arrays didn't turn. The scopes remained clean. No one raised binoculars. No one stood ready at the guns. The left flank drone suddenly veered off course, creating a false radar trace to draw attention. The central drone locked its heading straight at the hull, aiming between the engine compartment and the communications room, where the ship's SIGINT array was concentrated. A faint blip flickered across Ivan Khurs' radar. Brief, unclear. A technician leaned forward, staring at the screen, but the echo disappeared after 2 sweeps. He logged it as sea clutter. No reason for alarm. For the first time, the ship's infrared camera picked up a faint image, a low-profile object slicing the surface, leaving a thin white trail, speed unknown, target unclassified, no order to fire. The portside gunner turned his head and saw it. black, low, and moving impossibly fast, nothing like a fishing boat. He raised his finger to the trigger of the 14.5mm gun, but there was still no command to open fire. The bridge descended into confusion. Radar now displayed 3 simultaneous approach vectors. No more doubt, no more time. The alarm finally blared. The starboard gunner unlocked the breach, but with sea-skimming targets, effective range was near 0. The first burst of tracers screamed across the water and missed. The lead Magura 5-5 switched to terminal attack mode, throttling up to 56 miles per hour and charging straight for the hull. The other 2 swung wide, executing a cross-strike maneuver to split the ship's defensive fire. Distance dropped below 980 feet. The lead drone tilted its bow, aligning for a direct impact vector. Mounted on its nose was a directional warhead weighing 660 pounds, pre-programmed for a ram and detonate strike. Inside Ivan Khurs, alarm still screamed as the gunners scrambled for control. The firing order came too late. Survival time now counted in seconds. The 14.5mm barrels swung sluggishly, the target too small, too fast, hugging the sea surface. Impossible to lock on. The Magura number 1 punched through the first burst of fire. A round tore the composite hull but did not deflect it. The USV's hull trembled, but its speed did not drop. On the starboard quarter, Magura number 2 approached from the right flank, a crossing angle strike, simulating a secondary spear to draw fire away from the main axis. The deck-mounted machine gun swept instinctively and sprayed rounds and scored no hits. Magura number 3 drove straight for the stern, where the ELINT antenna cluster, satellite navigation suites, and the ship's high data mast were concentrated. All 3 USVs were now inside approximately 100 meters range. "Cease fire! Prepare for impact!" rang out, but it was too late. Magura number 1 rammed the port side, directly beneath the bridge. The impact sensor triggered and sent the detonation signal to the warhead. Immediate initiation. A white-orange fireball bloomed across the sea. Peak overpressure slammed laterally into the hull, producing a penetration effect nearly equal to approximately 1,000 kilograms of TNT, tearing open the second deck and ripping antenna arrays from their mounts. Magura number 3 struck the stern. The blast hit the auxiliary engine room and the main power distribution trunk. The shock broke the number 1 drive shaft. Flames began to crawl out of the machinery spaces. The ship listed slightly to starboard. Magura number 2, despite taking 2 rounds, held its course. It skimmed past the first blast, swung in from the starboard, and punched through into the SIGINT receiver bank. The third detonation followed. A fire column taller than approximately 30 meters climbed skyward, snapping the main radar mast and shredding the radio room. Flames lanced through the hull and into the reserve fuel tanks. The entire ELINT SIGINT antenna suite was destroyed. The main electrical bus lost power. Water began flooding the decks as the ship listed. Emergency dewatering pumps engaged, but the pumps were dead. Black smoke rose from 2 burning points along the hull. The midship's deck was catastrophically deformed by shock, warped and fractured. A naval officer was thrown overboard. His fate unknown. On the sea, fires still burned. Ivan Khurs lost all contact with Fleet Command. The main mast had been sheared off, the satellite transmitter melted, and military band radios answered nothing. Emergency control fell back to signal lamps and mechanical horns. Fire spread from impact point 2 into the auxiliary power room, igniting lithium battery racks and high-voltage cabling. A small secondary explosion occurred, not massive, but it created an internal overpressure that blew sealed doors in the central engineering compartment. Black smoke began to push into the portside service corridors. Underdeck visibility collapsed. The semi-automatic firefighting system activated, but water mains had been ruptured by the third blast. The engineering watch reported the engine room was flooded, water pouring in fast through a hull breach below the waterline. The ship's list oscillated, bulkhead pressures rose, warning of imminent structural failure if balanced pumping was not restored within the next 2 minutes. Far off, from the Podlet K1 coastal radar near Sevastopol, command began to lose a coherent signal lock on the ship's hull. Telemetry faded to a single indeterminate thermal dot approximately 12 kilometers from the vessel's original position. Ivan Khurs, the Black Sea Fleet's premier electronic reconnaissance center, no longer had combat capability. no comms, no realistic chance of independent survival. A few life rafts auto-deployed, 8 crew able to move clambered to the uppermost deck, but the heat let them stand in place for no more than 30 seconds at a time. The sinking of Ivan Khurs was not merely a preemptive strike of firepower, it was a strategic knockout to Russia's Black Sea early warning architecture. The fleet's long-range electronic collection capability, centered on Project 18,280, was severed instantly. The single node that allowed the Black Sea Fleet to cue land-based S-400 radars, monitor UAVs and USVs, and designate remote targets for Crimea's air defenses was neutralized in under 10 minutes. In a sea where surface warships were forced to hide and coastal radars were continually disrupted by drones, Ivan Khurs had been the Kremlin's last open eye. Now it lay burning and black. Moscow's response followed the wartime control of information playbook. No images, no confirmations, no public mourning. The only line from the Russian Ministry of Defense spoke of a repelled USV attack, no damage reported. 3 days later, satellite imagery showed a charred patch of sea over approximately 300 square meters with no trace of the reconnaissance ship. Rather than admit loss, Russia chose concealment. On the ground, however, the Black Sea had lost a critical tactical anchor. No official statement, no press conference, no footage of the USV launch. That was all Ukraine left behind after one of the Black Sea's most effective asymmetric strikes since the war began. No medals, no operator photos, no one to claim credit. For Kyiv, the attack was not for show. It was a reminder that in any stretch of water Russia deems safe, at any distance its radars assume secure, and at any hour when Russian crews think they can drink vodka on shift, knives under the surface are still moving, silently, relentlessly.